Thank you everyone for joining us today for our Combating Counterfeit Drugs and the Drug Supply Chain Security Act webinar. Joining us today, we have G. Mathen, who is the Director of Pharmacy over at Texas Children's Hospital. We have Bahar, Aliakbarian, and our Senior R&D Director and Associate Professor at Axia Institute over at Michigan State University. We also are joined by John Wirthlin, the principal owner of Tip of the Spear Consulting. Go ahead and get kicked off. So our agenda today is to identify and grow threat counterfeit drug pose in our healthcare supply chain. We're going to discuss how the DSCSA may help ensure drug safety, but could also cause delays in the supply chain. We're going to explain the findings of the Axia Institute's pilot study to combat counterfeit drugs and helping mitigate logistical delays. We're also going to describe current and emerging technology and best practice workflows to increase drug safety from manufacturing to patient administration. Who is Zebra? So we are the leading #1 in rugged mobile computing. We are also leading in mobile RFID. So we're really excited to have that conversation today with you guys. Our channel ecosystem is a very important part to who we are here at Zebra. And you can see the continued awards we have there. So we're excited to dive into this webinar today, and I'm going to hand it over to G. Mathen. But before we do that, I just want to remind all attendees that you guys are placed in listen-only mode. So please, throughout this webinar, please put your questions in the chat. We will take those at the end of the webinar. And also, this session is being recorded, so this will be shared out post-webinar. So I will pass it over to G, and if you could kick us off there.
Hey, thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning. I'm really excited about this topic, and I'm glad everybody's joined us this morning. So what we're going to talk about early on is to kind of what are counterfeit drugs and what are the impacts on our patients. And I think it's really good to understand what the problem is and why we're going down this pathway. So next slide. So if you think about it from a medication perspective, at Texas Children's, we spend well over $450 million every year on medications. And medications come to us. And those medications are then in turn given to our patients. So when our parents bring their children to our hospital, they put their trust in us to make sure that they are cured, they are healthy when they leave. They come to us with a problem and they leave, and no parent expects anything to go wrong. However, counterfeit medications pose a serious threat to our patients that we are completely unaware of. I'm going to get into the topics of inactive ingredients, toxic contaminants, and compromised treatments. Next slide, please. So we do have that empty promise, right? When we have medications that come into us, 95% of all medications that are injectable are clear. So when you look at a liquid in a vial, there's no way any person can determine whether or not this medication is actually what is in the vial. And for many years, we assumed in pharmacy, hey, if we get it, it should be correct. What we're learning is the counterfeit world that has started way before medications were being counterfeited. Money, purses, you name it, it's out there. But that impact on patient care is incredible, right? Patients receive no therapeutic benefit. If there's no active pharmaceutical ingredient in this liquid that's sent to us and we inject it to the patient, the potential of worsening their condition becomes high, right? We have seen where anti-malarial drugs have starch instead of active ingredients, diabetic medications that lack insulin. So once we give these medications, the intent is that there should be positive impact. But what we're saying is negative impact, and there's no way for us to combat it. And so the ultimate result is potential negative harm and worst case, death in the patient. So delayed or ineffective treatment, progression of disease, and increased risk of complications. And when we talk about medications, we're not just thinking about what's given at home. We're also talking about what we send. I mean, in the hospital, we're about what we send the patients home with. Next slide. So the cocktail of what is inside each one of these medications, it is incredible. There have been studies that look at composition. They've found industrial dyes, lead paint, rat poison, and antifreeze has even been found in counterfeits. How would we know? And that's the question. How would we know? The health risk, severe allergic reactions, organ damage, potentially leading to death. And once again, death is the worst factor that we're giving counterfeit medications. And at that point, it's too late. Our vulnerable population, just like at Texas Children's, is our children and pregnant women. And those with compromised immune systems have an increased potential for risk. So once again, what is in the drug we're giving? That's a question that we should all ask ourselves. Next. So when we ask that question, the question becomes trust. As I mentioned earlier, parents put their trust in us when they bring us their children. We're going to do everything possible to make whatever issue they're having go away. But how can that trust work when we have poor distribution channels, fake drugs, infiltrating our networks? You know, when we receive a medication, it looks wonderful. I mean, if you think about it, $450 million of drug spend for us, with thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of widgets that show up every day. And many vials are small, but they look so much alike, right? And how do we know what's inside is correct? The consequences are simple. If we inject a counterfeit product into a patient, that patient has a negative reaction, and it's discovered that it was counterfeit. The question becomes, what did we as a hospital do to prevent that from happening? And that public trust will impact our healthcare system. The financial losses will also impact pharmaceutical companies, because the first question is going to be, how did that happen? How did we allow a vial to be compromised? And how did it look so similar? The solutions are always going to come where we have to have enhanced supply chain security, authentication technologies, and consumer education. And I want to reiterate, consumer education has to be high. One of the things that we've learned in pharmacy is that whenever a patient goes home, we have to have communication exactly how to use the medication. We have to give them documentation of all the potential harm from the medication, side effects. But we never take into consideration, do we understand the pedigree of the medication, where we got it from? And I think that's something that we need to be able to add to part of the education. Next slide. So we have to take action, right? And action started many years ago. This problem isn't new to us, but what we're seeing is more and more, as technology is advancing to determine that things are counterfeit. Once again, we go back to what I stated earlier. When we find out a patient had a negative impact, now we have easy ways to pull the medication, do assays, test exactly what's happened, what's in the medication, what's the active ingredient, or what was missing. And as our technology and our rapid turnaround of being able to understand what happened increases, we're actually seeing more and more of this happening. In the past, we would never allocate that to counterfeit drugs. You know, it would not be the first place we would go. Now, the potential is higher. So government regulations are needed to support patient education initiatives and report suspected counterfeits. And then action needs to happen. We talked about empowering patients. We need to give the patients every way to verify authenticity. And those pharmacies, we need to be able to say, hey, listen, this is where it should work. How many of you have been to a restaurant, and outside the restaurant, there's a grading system that says this is how clean their institution is? Well, why wouldn't we want to have rating systems that tell us that we have done everything possible to prevent counterfeit medications from being within this particular location? I think together we can do this. building a healthcare system protected from the threat of counterfeit drugs. We have to do it together. Next step, next page. So the government stepped in and says, hey, listen, while we don't want to regulate things, we see that there's a problem here. So the Drug Supply Chain Security Act came into initiative several years ago. It started. And I want to go to the next slide and walk through what this is and why that makes a difference for us. So how do we enhance safety? Very simple. We have to serialize and track and trace to identify and remove counterfeit, stolen, contaminated drugs. If the manufacturer has a serialization process in place, we can go from production to the arm. And that's where we need to get to. Like, where did it start and where did it finish? And that way we will have 100% guarantee of knowing where things are. Verification of procedures minimize medication errors. And I talked about it earlier. If we don't know what we're giving, how are we sure the impacts of our changes to the patient? Right? Enhancing drug security translates to improved patient care and reduce health risk. So the law was initiated, right? And in 2013, this went into place. And the goal is by 2023 to have this incorporated. So next slide. So what was the benefits beyond safety? It's accountability. I don't know how many of people here but understand the gray market. The gray market is one of those things where when we get into shortages, right, we wind up looking at elsewhere to buy medications because we have no alternatives and choices. We have to get medications to patients. I remember several years ago, we had a sodium bicarbonate back order. We couldn't find it anywhere. So what did we do? We went and got Arm & Hammer and we looked up the formulation and we made it ourselves. Is that the right thing to do? Well, at that time, there was no options, but it's definitely not the right thing to do. So improving drug accountability from manufacturer to distribution allows us to prevent shortages and ensures timely medication access. Shortages, each and everyone that's listening on this call, if you understood the last 3 or 4 years, has been an incredible nightmare. We are always short of this or that, and we've had to be creative in how we take care of our patients. Just imagine if one of those choices that we were creative with was a counterfeit medication. How much does that put stress into the system? Stronger supply chain, integrating facilities faster recalls in response to public health emergencies, using GS1 barcodes, RFID tags, all of that is incorporated to make sure that we can move in and out using data. And that's where I want to emphasize data will optimize pharmacy operations and management. I want to tell you a little story here where data it drives our decisions. At Texas Children's, we've invested highly. After being part of the Axia Institute's study, we realized that we are definitely not where we need to be. We engaged in a process of upgrading our RFID as well as our barcoding technologies in procurement and storage of medications. And we actually went on a campaign of reducing gray market production and purchasing. And so these things have helped us feel better at what we're doing, but it still has risk. Next slide. So there is a ripple effect, right? Now we're asking our manufacturers to have wholesale implementation costs for technology upgrades. And there are some small manufacturers it's going to have an impact on, right? But I think the ripple effect of this is far outweighed by the safety that we have to have and our responsibility for our patients. Data integration and interoperability challenges. Currently at Texas Children's, we have our primary wholesalers, but we have lots of direct and drop items and ship items. And we still pay and take care of many vendors that still do business on paper. We're at 2024. How do you even consider doing business on paper? So a lot of these challenges are going to be for those smaller companies to be able to adapt and change. But once again, there should be no compromise in this. Strict verification processes and procedures should lead to temporary medications shortages in specific situations. So the reaction would be from some of these manufacturers that, well, if you're going to put that much burden on me, I'm not going to produce as much. But we as the public, we as healthcare professionals, and we as the general, once again, public, we need to push. We need to make sure that we let people know that this is important to us. And our state legislators, our national conference legislators, they all need to be aware that we need to trust the medications that we are getting. Next slide. So we have to find a balance. An optimizing implementation for maximum impact. We have to collaborate, right? We have to collaborate among stakeholders. Government, industry, and healthcare is crucial for smooth implementation. The side effects, we talk about the ripple effects of the negative side, but the positive side is now we'll have better information that comes out to back orders. We will start looking at people that are hoarding, right? One of the greatest things in back order management is as soon as somebody knows something's missing, tendency of hoarding comes in. And that means everybody else will be without, right? We at Texas Children's have taken on a task force that's looking at cancer medications and prevention of how do we make sure that we have no back orders. And one of the things that we learned about right away is the potential of hoarding. But we don't know about hoarding because there's no database that tells you exactly. It's interchangeable what anybody purchased, how much they purchased, and when they purchased it. So with this new implementation of DSCSA, the government as well as industry, as well as our healthcare providers can share information to ensure that we have the right amount of drug when we need it. Phased implementation and targeted exemptions can minimize distortions for smaller businesses. I think one of the things that the government has realized is the cost in startup for these smaller businesses. And I think they've given exemptions to many people to move forward with this. And we have to continuously evaluate and adjust as necessary to optimize efficiency and minimize delays. And my partners in this seminar will walk through all the pieces of technology that we could optimize. And it's amazing where we are today. Next slide. So we have to build a resilient future, right? Our patients are resilient, right? I mean, one of the things that I look at, whenever we have a tough day, we walk out onto what we call our miracle bridge, and we see little patients who are on chemo treatments, who has hair all falling out, multiple IV tubes in them, but they have a smile on their face because they know that the future is better. They know that a smile is much more and can get through a lot of the pain. So that helps us understand that we have to lay the foundation for a more secure and transparent global pharmaceutical supply. For those patients who trust us, it is imperative that we do what it takes to make sure their lives are protected. Our safety fosters healthier communities and strengthens public trust. And long-term benefits outweigh any temporary challenges. As with everything we've done in our history in medication management, the first steps are always difficult, but then it will become part of our day-to-day function. And we should not be challenged by those day-to-day functions early on, and we should be resilient to do what we need to do. Next. So a little bit of the history, we talked about this a little bit. And in 2015, the licensure standards came out. 2013, the government actually introduced it. And then we've seen G10 barcodes come out, serial numbers. We're pushing manufacturers to have all the information on a barcode. Wholesalers can accept only sell serialized products in 2019, 2020. In 2023, exchanging that information, and then product tracing. And so November 2024 is the mandate. We all must comply. Next slide. So serialization of data and capture and sharing across supply chain, that is what we get. This is the slide that should be the most important part for your takeaway. If you walk back to your C-suite and say, hey, why do we have to have this technology? Why do we need to do this? This is imperative. It's a mandate. But that mandate actually comes with value to your institution. You get an accurate data file containing two key data elements, right? We get G10s, which gives us a lot of information that we never had before. And that information can help us be better at doing recalls and making sure expiration dating is checked. The data, if a data file is not present or accurate, the shipment is stopped. So we actually can stop the potential of something that is not correct or kosher to be in our system. And then Novartis and other manufacturers expect 5% error rate due to the line of sight capture rates. But that's why I think we're going to learn from this and say we need a partner barcoding along with RFID. And RFID has the potential to significantly reduce and eliminate data capture. And last but not least, before I end, why do we put healthcare last? I had the great pleasure of going to many facilities during this process. And what people do for FedEx, to track or Amazon, to track and trace each one, we spent more effort in making sure that happens. My daughter always, I'll end on this. My daughter always tells me, because she was helping me when I was putting the slides together to be in practice. She goes, Dad, when we order pizza, we know where every step of the process is. Are you telling me you don't know where that is in pharmacy? And I had to tell her, yep, you're absolutely right, Emily. And so the challenge is on us. She started laughing and she said, you fix it. And I said, we have really smart people in the industry and we're going to figure this out. Next slide. So I'm amazed and absolutely it's a pleasure for me to introduce Bahar Aliakbarian. She is a fantastic resource. She taught me a lot during our site visits and when we got together to do the case study. It's incredible that we know very little until we open up our ears and say, how can this improve our process? So Bahar, over to you.
Thank you so much, G, for the nice introduction. So just before starting to talk about the pilot description, I'd like to briefly start by providing you with some background about the Axia Institute. We are part of Michigan State University's Office of Research and Innovation. We were founded in 2013, and we are a research institute based in Midland, Michigan, focusing on developing value chain solutions. Axia Institute is a member-driven organization, and we work with the industry in a consortium-based fashion to help address value chain challenges in each of our vertical areas of focus, including healthcare, food and agriculture, and advanced manufacturing. The Axia Institute also operates the Axia Lab, which is an independent third-party RFID testing facility that first opened in 2021 to focus on the validation of RFID tagged pharmaceutical, and this is where the pilot project was performed. Next slide, please. So, as G also mentioned, the pharma industry is facing challenges in fully adopting and complying with the DSCSA. Also, experts are particularly concerned about the accuracy and effectiveness of traditional data capture methods like barcode. To address this, we formed a group of experts to explore advanced technologies that could improve end-to-end traceability within the pharmaceutical supply chain. The group agreed that RFID is one of the promising solutions, as it has already proven successful in other industries such as apparel, warehouse management, and also G mentioned maybe pizza transportation or FedEx. So beyond meeting the DSCSA requirement, we believe that RFID can offer significant benefits, including reducing medication error, minimizing delays, and combating counterfeit drugs, ultimately improving patient safety. So the goal of RFID Phase 1 pilot was to evaluate the technical feasibility and value proposition of applying RFID to different pharmaceutical products, including solids, and liquids in various packaging forms, all within our laboratory environment. Next, please. So, as I mentioned earlier, a group of supporters helped shape this pilot. Our goal was to involve at least one major player from each segment of the supply chain. As you can see in this slide, we worked with 3 pharmaceutical manufacturers, including Apotex, Sanofi, and Fresenius Kabi, that they provided the pharmaceutical products with different shapes and formulations. Cencora, one of the big 3 wholesalers, supplied totes. We also had valuable insights from FedEx, Texas Children's Hospital, and Walgreens, representing other key parts of the supply chain. We also use tags, readers, software, and other valuable insights from, of course, Zebra, Bartender, Seagull, Axis, Antares Vision, CCLE Agile, and GS1 US. Next slide. So here, basically in this slide, I summarized all of the steps that we used to finalize the pilot phase 1. Initially, we hosted a brainstorming session with key industry stakeholders that are all listed as this step 1 to address the DSCSA traceability challenges. And here, I really would like to thank John Wirthlin from Zebra at that time that helped us shaping this event. So then we discussed traceability issues and explored RFID solution, and we formed basically the framework and the goal of the first pilot. Following that session, we toured Axia lab and showcased RFID and packaging technologies to all of the stakeholders. And then, as it is shown in step 2, between August 2022 and April 2023, we conducted several site visits to EIJL, CCL, Cencora, Fresenius Kabi, FedEx Innovation Lab, and Texas Children's Hospital. So all of these site visits were really helpful for us to identify supply chain risks and develop strategies to improve pharmaceutical product traceability and security. After collecting the information from all of our site visits and bi-weekly meetings with all of the participants, we developed our testing procedures, which reflects the major key parameters of the real-world scenario. Next one. Just to briefly talk about our approach or within the lab environment, all of the sellable units that they were different formulations from different pharma manufacturers were tagged and aggregated in totes from Cencora, and they were read with an RFID tunnel, creating corresponding SSCC labels based on the GS1 encoding scheme. We tested dry and liquid pharma mixtures, and we developed different configuration of totes with higher amount of liquids or higher amount of solids, as you can see as formulation A and B in this slide. Then the totes were labeled and added to a pallet and read with an RFID panel at the pallet wrapper. And again, we aggregated to a single SSCC pallet tag. After disaggregation, the pallets were read at the doctor portal for shipping simulations. Within this testing environment, we tested different parameters, including the tag design, tag labeling, placement, tote configuration, palletizer speed and read time, and we optimized all of them within this laboratory environment. We confirm that RFID provides high level of accuracy, saving time and effort. Next slide. So the details of the pilot phase 1 were presented in various webinars and conferences that are listed here. And I think Jenny can then post the links to these sites if you are interested to read the details. And then, based on the positive feedback that we received from the industry, we started the second phase of the pilot, which concentrates on additional end-to-end testing at a higher scale. Next slide. So the pilot phase 2, which is funded by the companies that their logos are listed in this slide, focuses on testing a larger volume of RFID tag pallets, including also transportation to and from Syncora site. At the Syncora FTC, we will also track the entire process, including their receiving, inspection, unpacking, formulation of new totes, packing, and shipping. Our goal is to evaluate the system's performance throughout their operational workflow. So the main goal of this phase 2 is to upscale also our laboratory scale software that was developed for the phase 1, and also to develop a cloud-based software system to capture, store, and share the data between entities at different geolocations. And also, we would like to establish best practices and guidelines for seamless technology integration into the existing operations. In this phase, we are also testing the physical stability of the tagged pallets under tough shipping condition using our School of Packaging vibration table, and we simulate exceptions to assess the digital capability of RFID. So we would like to thank our supporters for providing not only funding for this phase, but also materials, including tags, readers, and also software, and also a lot of very good insights and advices. Next one. So the pilot phase 2 is under progress, and we plan to showcase the results and discuss the outcome during our upcoming Axia Summits, which is in October 21st and 22nd in Midland, Michigan. So I encourage everyone to register and participate in this summit. Other than presenting the results of this pilot, we will also have other initiatives going on from the Axia team, and you will also be able to have a tour in our RFID-enabled facility. And with that, I would like to pass it over to my friend and colleague, John Wirthlin, that I had the opportunity to work with him for the past few years. And John, up to you.
Thank you, Bahar. You are a dear friend, and I appreciate the nice thoughts, as well as with G over the last couple of years, getting to know you guys, and you know, it's been a pleasure seeing this come together, not only in academia but along the whole supply chain. So I'm really proud of what we've been able to accomplish. So let's go ahead and get into it. I'm going to talk about a few things, but I'm also going to refer back to some of the things that I heard from G and Bahar. So if you can go to the next slide, please, Jennifer. So my background is I actually started my career in the Air Force as a hospital medic, and then went into medical logistics, and I've been in various IT integration, program management, and now about the last 5 years, I've been in this automatic identification world with RFID, data capture, barcoding, printing. So in my practice, I put all that together for customers to help them understand how to improve their workflows and things. And you've kind of heard some of the work that's been done in the pharmacy to prove out this technology and how it can be applied. And you know, within the pharmacy itself, I mean, I think G hit on a lot of this, but be able to use technology such as RFID, which allows you to be able to see something and grab details in a split second of 100 different things at once, versus having to do line of sight barcoding, is just it's very, very advantageous, right? It's going to reduce risk. It's going to reduce time. It's going to allow us to concentrate on more important things with healthcare workers and pharmacy workers. And it just makes things a lot safer, really, for our patients. And when we talk about patients, I think about my family, I think about my friends. You know, those are those people that, you know, are are in that, kind of patient demographic, right? And, G and I presented this at the HIMSS conference in April. And one of the things I thought was interesting from him is that, 1 out of 8 people or medications have some kind of counterfeit ingredient or, aspect to them, which may be something from, no impact really to the patient. But obviously they're not getting the whole thing of what they need. Or it could be just a rash, or it could be something that requires hospitalization or even, even death. And to see that that's 1 out of 8 is really a scary thing. And the Drug Supply Chain Security Act is really a great way to do that. But it's been very slow as far as understanding how to do that, how to get the manufacturers to be able to get the data correct. And I think that's one of the things that I think is interesting is the standards are there. They've been established in other verticals like we've talked about. But trying to get the data correct from one place to another, from a wholesaler to a dispenser, from a manufacturer to dispenser, is really what's been tripping up, getting this rolled out. It's supposed to be rolled out a year ago, and we're in this stabilization period, and we're hoping that it's going to look better in November. I've been a little bit withdrawn from it since for the last year, but from what I understand, there has been progress, but it's certainly not going to be at 100% come November, which is concerning. And especially, like you talked about, you provided the pizza example. When people ask me about RFID, generally what I get from anywhere from the dock worker to the CEO is, oh yeah, that was something that we tried 10, 15 years ago. It didn't work. It was too expensive. And what I tell people is that in the last 4 to 5 years, the RFID adoption, the technology has gotten so much better, and the price point has gotten cheaper. And they say, well, what do you mean by that? And I happen to be sitting in a hotel room in Arkansas, about an hour and a half from Walmart's headquarters, and I provide this example. I said, well, if you agree that Walmart is one of the most frugal companies on the face of the earth, then they're adopting RFID from their supply base and mandating that, and they're able to tell you where every package of underwear is in their store, then maybe we should apply that to something important like medications and making sure our family and friends are safe. So, it's definitely a dichotomy of where our society feels that the priorities are. And I'm not a political person, but it's just interesting that, we're in the midst of this very important election coming up, and it's all about priorities. And technology is there. It's been there for a while. It's not something that's new. It's not a science experiment that you're bringing to your CFO. It's something that's very tangible, very stable, and there's no reason really not to adopt it in order to make everybody's lives better and increase our efficiencies. So next slide, please, Jennifer. So again, the value of medication management with RFID, the basic difference is that I can put an RFID label or an inlay into a label. So to make sure everybody understands what that means is that if I'm barcoding something and the barcode number is 1, 2, 3, 4, I can encode at time of printing that same information into a RFID inlay. So the label doesn't change at all. The process doesn't change, but I can capture that information without having to see that barcode and having to pull the trigger and aim and record that data. You see the picture here where, there may be a box of 100 different vials, and, we tested that at the Axia Institute, and I can see that in a split second at an extremely accurate rate, much more accurate than a human being can do. So as you can imagine, putting those different read points, throughout the supply chain and all the way to the patient is something that is, to me is really a no-brainer. And it allows us to understand where things are, allows us to locate things, and it takes away that manual process that takes our healthcare workers away from dealing with patient to doing administrative tasks. And when you put it that way, the nursing staffs, pharmacists, pharmacy technicians, I think are all for it, wouldn't you say, Jen or G? They're looking for that help, and the help is there. It's kind of like having a socket and a plug, and both pieces are there, but for some reason we can't get them to go together. And other industries are doing that, and I think we should do it if we think knowing whether a counterfeit Gucci bag is important, then maybe know if any counterfeit medication is probably just as important, or I'd say quite a bit more. So again, lots of benefits here to be able to do that. So Jennifer, one more slide, please. So again, the difference in barcoding and RFID, it's a complementary technology. It allows us to see things, what in the different assets where labels are being printed. Those devices can be upgraded to be able to allow for encoding of RFID labels or media. So again, it's a very simple thing. I can make a printer RFID compliant in less than 15 minutes. So it's a very, very simple application. And then the ability to share that information with GS1 standards. So I know that the global trade identification number, the serial number, the lot code and expiration date are encoded into that little bitty chip is very useful. So I can use that in several different areas and get that information and ingest that information in my system to make very, very specific choices. When I was an 18-year-old, I was in a medical surgical ward, and overnight I had to always count the par level closets and see what was expiring. I'm an 18-year-old kid, 19, 20. I'd count, but would I check all the expiration dates? No, I wouldn't. RFID would allow me to do that very accurately in under 3 or 4 minutes, just with a handheld device. So again, we talked about Walmart. A lot of industries have adopted this. It's not something new, and I think we need to follow suit. One more, Jen. Yeah, and this is just, kind of the analysis of, the differences between, barcodes, one at a time through faster outputs. And I've kind of covered a lot of this. So there's a lot of business value benefits and a lot of operational benefits that allow us to reduce that impact. We mentioned Novartis when we talked to them, eliminating, 5% of errors was, I think 50, 60, $70 million a month across their facilities. And that was just one manufacturer. If you can imagine, putting those numbers in front of your CFO and telling this story and showing that we tested at Axia Institute with real drugs, there's definitely a really strong, valid business case. So Jennifer, I think that's my last slide before we go to questions, if I'm not mistaken. So thanks everybody for allowing us to talk about this. Oh, yeah, one more. Sorry. Yeah, and we talked about this, big decreases in production costs and manufacturers, ability to increase production, due to not having to scan things. And again, you don't have to keep as much stock. Your inventory levels go down, which means your cost of inventory goes down. So these are all things that the financial office and the CFO's office need to understand in order to champion your initiatives. So, it's all there. It's all very, very straightforward. Okay. All right. I think that's the last one, right, Jennifer?
Yep, that's the last
all right.
one.
Okay. You slipped a little yellow thing into me, but that's okay. All right. Well, thank you, everybody. I appreciate it.
Yeah, absolutely. We have some questions coming through the chat. So this is the perfect amount of time we got left here before the close. So the first question was, do you have any data on what percentage of drugs in the overall supply chain are actually counterfeit? So I think, that might be something we can pull towards you.
Yeah, the data that we found that we looked at is roughly 20% of all medications are counterfeit, is what we discovered. Interestingly enough, when you have $41 billion of spend per year for hospitals for medications, just think about the volume of 20%. And then while doing research for this, the government doesn't even track for how much counterfeit money we have in the system. So the capturing the data alone of what is counterfeit or what is not, it's almost the cat and mouse game. As soon as we discover one, they change the operation and look at another drug. So it's astounding, 20%. I think John mentioned it. One in every 5 drugs is counterfeit. Is hard to accept, but I think that's the reality.
Yeah, thank you, G. The next question we're getting in here is, with the DSCSA going into effect in November, what is the expected compliance rate?
I think the expected compliance rate is high. Yeah, I mean, 95%, because I think that's what we've gotten an extension for. There will be exceptions. You can file, there are a couple of exemptions you can file for, but those will be monitored. Realistically, is it going to happen for every institution? Large academic institutions might be able to get this up and running faster, but smaller hospitals, rural hospitals, those are the places that we're going to see. Hopefully, we will have that data presented back to us from the government as compliance data starts moving into the system.
Yeah, I think, I'll be attending, there's a pharmacy manufacturer called Logic Pharma in a couple of weeks in Boston. And it'll be interesting to see the manufacturers and dispensers and wholesalers getting together and kind of assessing where we're at with that. So it'll be very interesting conversations in about this fall.
Yeah, thank you both. And then two questions coming in from one person here. Is their threat model available for supply chain?
I don't have an answer for that, G. I don't know if you or Bahar.
No, I don't have. That's a good question. I think that's something we could look into from a hospital specific threat model that we look at. Basically, as I said in my presentation, we have no safeguards to prevent it at this point, right? And so that scares us immensely, knowing that it's out there, and we move forward. So we should probably have a better value, or we'll be able to see the data. I think what's missing is the numerator. We have the denominator of what we purchase. We want to see how much of it falls out because it didn't fall to standards. And then hopefully, if the government wants to take it to the next level, that they will provide a way for us to be able to look at those things that we don't accept and have them tested, and then backtrace those to where did we get them from? How did we get them? And what is the ingredient in it? And look for ways in the future that can be easily tested, prevented from even coming in. So.
Yeah, thank you. And then the second question they had here was a little bit of a different focus, where how do you prevent fake RFID from entering the supply chain?
What exactly fake RFID means? Because I like, is it only the physical? Because RFID is a combination of physical sensor and the digital portion of that. So, and I think the serialization can be here mentioned as the digital portion of that, which is really hard to be faked, because if the serialization comes from a manufacturer, how someone can exactly encode the same number, knowing all the procedures that is used within the hospital. So I think it's really, really hard to do that, but I really do not know what they mean by the fake RFID.
Yeah, and to kind of add on that, it's not just the RFID tag, right, or the data, because the same data is in the barcode. It's the advanced shipments, it's the data file that's exchanged between trading partners, whether it's a manufacturer to dispenser or a dispenser to a pharmacy, that has a lot more information in it, that's kept in those manufacturers' records, that helps to validate that medication. So there's a lot more information that's along in that packet of data, besides just those 4 data points that I think help to do that authentication.
Yeah, and I'd like to add to that too. That's exactly right from Bahar and John. So when we started down this pathway, we've been working with Zebra to look at options. We're excited to look at different options to create a way where we do replace tech check tech. If we're having a product come in, we want to use the barcode to drive against RFID and use that check against check. And if that works, there's going to be some efficiencies gained within pharmacy from procurement and storage as well. And we're really excited about how we can take pieces of technology that we've seen in other industry, have work with Zebra to modify it and put it into pharmacies and have even greater level of accuracy of what we're receiving is what we're supposed to receive.
Yeah, thank you all. We have 3 more questions in here and we have a couple minutes left. So if anyone else has any additional questions, please go ahead and drop them in the question chat. Are pharma manufacturers using RFID technology today, or is this going to be a new implementation we'll begin to see?
Yeah, I can take a spot at that. I think the pharma manufacturers that we had in the pilot, with Axia, did a lot of sharing of the knowledge, right? There's been several different, industry events, sharing opportunities as part of the DSCSA. So the word is out that RFID is a viable technology. If you understand RFID, a lot of times liquids are a barrier to adoption, but the Axia Institute's study was able to show that the RFID technology has mitigated those risks that we had, I'd say 6 years ago. So I think they're getting the word. I believe some of the barriers are there is so much investment in getting the barcode correct and getting some of those other steps that they didn't plan for RFID. It certainly wasn't mandated from the FDA because, again, it wasn't understood that how that could work. So, a quote, a friend of mine from Syncora said that RFID is something that we need to put on the shelf and put behind a glass that says, "Hey, break here in case of emergency." And I think with the adoption struggles, we're probably getting at that area where, hey, it's up on the shelf, it's been proven. I think manufacturers are going to start coming to that and saying, all right, now that I've gotten what I need to get done with barcoding that I was supposed to do, now I can start adopting other technologies. And I think, voices from the dispensers like GE and Walgreens are what's going to help that as we go forward, just like what Walmart did with their buying power. That's going to help push that priority up the supply chain.
And John, that was a great lean in actually into our last question here, which was, is the ideal vision to use both RFID and barcoding to get accuracy rates up? If so, how much would it increase? So that was a great lean in there.
Yeah, Bahar, do you want to take that from your study? I think that would be appropriate.
Just a part of that. I think it's written as it is mandated by DSCSA. We need to have a visible carrier, which is now the barcoding. So the goal is not to replace barcode with the RFID, but is just to match these two information together in order to increase the traceability and use all the other benefits of RFID that we discussed during the seminar.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, thank you. So those were all the questions we have in the chat. Thank you guys all for joining us today. We really appreciate your time. And we appreciate our panelists' time here going through this topic today. So thank you all for joining us, and we hope to find you on our next webinar.